you want to be successful? Do you want to grow your business? Do you want to dominate the day? Then you're going to need Big Skip Energy. Susanna, welcome to the Big Skip Energy Podcast. I'm sorry, I should say welcome back to the Big Skip Energy Podcast. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back. It's an absolute pleasure. Love you. Love your podcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's an absolute honor to have you on the show again. You are now a repeat offender, but you know what? Your episode the first time was one of my most commented on and listened to episodes. So you must be doing
That's
something
what you
right.
say to all the girls. That's what you say to all the guests.
No, just most of them. So last time we talked, though, we were talking from England, Great Britain. Now you are in somewhat of a different locale. Why don't you share a little bit about who you are, where you are, and a little bit of your story?
Absolutely. So my name is Susanna Gray Jones. I worked in recruitment in the education sector for about 13 years. As you can probably tell from my accent, I am from England and I had two babies, decided COVID hit and madly, like who would do this, decided, hey, I'm just going to set up my own business. You're getting no sleep. You've been in a job for 13 years. And I suddenly thought, why not? I backed
Why not,
myself.
right?
And sometimes you have to get to the moment where the world is in such a bizarre place as it was in COVID to think
Mm.
it's time to do something completely different. So that was my positive outcome of COVID, set up the business, did really well, better than expected. And then had a bit of a health scare actually and decided again something bad like COVID happened. And because it put everything into perspective for me, it made me think about we all think, everyone thinks that we're going to live forever. When I buy my house, when I get old, I'll grow old with this person, all this, we never remember that actually one day the unbearable truth, we might not be
Yeah.
here. So I had that kind
Right.
of morbid feeling, which I'm fine now, but I had that moment where I was like, oh, do you know what? What would I do? And I would move abroad. I've always wanted to move abroad. So
Mhm.
we moved to Dubai in the Middle East, which was now last August. So I set up my business
Nice.
over here, doing great, loved life here, climate a bit warm, but yeah, doing great.
But it's a dry heat, so you hardly even notice it, right? Uh, what
Well, it was 40
125 outside?
degrees, 40 degrees today. That's crazy, right?
Well, 40 degrees Celsius.
40 degrees Celsius, yeah.
Yeah,
Centigrade Celsius.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about how and why you got into recruitment first.
Well, I think a lot of people who study psychology, I love therapy, I love the human mind, I love getting to know
Mhm.
different people. Ever since I was a child, I was like, what makes people tick? And even with you, Skip, the first minute we met, I was like, oh, well, why does Skip act like that? And I,
That's a
I,
question people have been asking for a long, long time.
And I think there's a lot of people, you'll know if you're listening to this, whether you like setting friends up or you like sort of seeing how maybe dating, blind dating, all that kind of stuff. You like putting different personalities together. And if you're that
Mhm.
person who likes watching people gel and you're fascinated by it, then recruitment is a great career for you.
Yeah.
So I was sat at the back of my dad's class. He was the head teacher. And he was like, Suze, check out these teachers and let me know what you think. And I was like, ooh. And suddenly I was like, oh, I actually really like recruitment. So I was probably
Hmm.
about 8 when I realized I
I
loved
was gonna say
the
I
whole
hadn't heard that
process.
story before. I didn't realize that was your genesis into this field.
Yeah, that's why I'm so preppy. And I was a little headmaster's daughter once upon a time. So now you know my
Yeah, I
secret.
knew about the preppy part,
Oh, it's all enough.
but
Yeah.
also quite an accomplished vocalist, I do believe.
Oh, well, in my spare time, it's, I would have loved to have been a professional, but the truth is I don't think I was quite good enough. Sometimes we've got to admit, haven't we, our boundaries. And I think I like to think I was good enough at the time, but yeah,
Yeah.
I do it for fun. Sometimes these things are better to do as fun, right?
All right. Okay, tell me your favorite song for you to sing. Not that others
Ooh.
ask you to sing, but the favorite one that you
You really want to know. So it's
Of
actually
course I
Michael
want to know.
Jackson. Michael Jackson.
Which one?
Man in the Mirror. Man in the Mirror.
Man
It's
in the
my
Mirror.
karaoke song.
Awesome song. That's your karaoke song? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness gracious. Well, that might be worth a trip to Dubai just to hear you do karaoke, Man in the Mirror. So,
You would be very welcome. You'd be very welcome. You can sing with me. You can sing with me. We
woo,
can duet.
yeah, I'm not sure that they're ready for that. But all right. So, Susanna, I brought you on here today. Obviously, we've known each other for a number of years now. And one thing that you and I haven't gotten a chance to talk a lot about, especially on our last time, with the podcast, is sales management and recruiting and sales. They go hand in hand. They share a lot of similar traits, themes, and that kind of thing. And you, in your position, get to see a lot of sales management successes and, frankly, failures. And one of the things that we talked about before coming on the air was, sales managers are in a lot of ways failing their teams these days. And I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that. What kind of stands out to you most about that topic, and we'll kind of start off from there.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I must say, I think being a sales manager is probably the hardest job, whatever industry you're in, especially if you are a billing sales manager.
Mm,
So, to give you the example, whilst now I'll probably say the things that they don't do very well, I actually think I've got a lot of respect for any sales managers out there because it's such a difficult job.
thank
You're
you. I
trying to
appreciate
look
that.
after your own, you're excellent, Skip. But you're trying to run your own business. You're trying to reach your own targets, and you've always
Mhm.
got that person in your team who's also trying to reach their targets. And how do you manage your time? How do you do it well? And you know what? The number one thing I would say is that a lot of sales managers, and we've talked about this before, are recruited to a position of incompetence. And it might not be because they're good leaders, it might just be because they're strong billers. So,
Mm,
my first thing is there are a lot of sales managers in the roles who shouldn't be in the role.
agree
They
with that
should
completely.
be business development directors. Follow me, look at what I do, but I'm not going to manage you. Just
Mhm.
watch what I do. And I think companies need to have a very clear difference as to people who go down a progression route as a biller or a
Mhm.
performer opposed to a manager, because to me they're two separate things.
Mm.
I think the most important thing for any sales manager is to recruit well, but then to be accountable for that recruit and to onboard them in the perfect way.
Mhm.
If you are making a decision that someone is not successful by month 5, to me that is too late. You should
Mm.
know within the first 12 weeks. And that can only be done well if that person who's brought on knows exactly what is expected of them on a week by week basis.
That's
So
key, isn't
that
it? That's really key. You have to be able to
yeah,
communicate the expectations.
exactly. And if you're coming into my office, Skip, this would never happen, don't worry. And I'm saying, Skip, I'm so sorry you're not successful. We're letting you go. And I
Mhm.
see this with smaller businesses a lot.
Mm.
And you know what? I've got a soft spot for small businesses. I really do. Growing businesses that are developing. But I also believe that they have a responsibility for everyone that they take on. And the ones who do it really well are the ones who bring people in, very clear with them. They say, "We've got your back. So, if I want this more than you do, then we've got a problem." So, they
Yeah.
get their engagement, that accountability from the day one. That person will
Mhm.
know they're failing before you have to tell them. And they smash it. They recruit well. They grow. When
Mhm.
you let someone go, when you let that one person go, it's going to impact the team. It's going to impact your reputation. It's going to impact your retention. It's so crucial that you make the right hire as a sales manager. So you can never put enough time in those first 3 months is what I'm really trying to say here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, there's a school of thought that I think it was Gary V, that always preaches be slow to hire, fast to fire. And I think there's something to that.
Love that.
But at the same time, though, is it not the responsibility of the sales manager to also coach up and say, "Hey, look, you're not exactly who I thought you were, or I'm not getting exactly what I thought I was getting when I was hiring you. There's still something there." How much of so how should sales management walk that line, right? Of okay, do I just go ahead and cut bait and let them go, or do I say, you know what, there's potential here. I can coach them up if they follow the coaching, they will be successful. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think having difficult conversations, I read a lot about this because I'm
Mhm.
fascinated by humans not wanting to be confrontational, at
Yeah.
risk of being, but that humans don't like that intensity sometimes of just saying, "Hey, Skip, sorry, you're not performing as I thought you were." They'd rather jump off a cliff, they'd rather fire that person and walk them out the
Mm.
door than actually have that conversation
Sure.
because it could be so uncomfortable. So my first bit of advice would be to sit them down and to be very clear. And I love this little framework, which is EEC. So, example,
Mhm.
effect, and consequence. I talk about this a lot. You've heard me talk about
Yep.
this, but we need to talk to our recruits about what you're seeing, the effect that's having on maybe their outcomes, and the consequence on that to their performance, and then to be very clear with what they're doing and how much they want it. Sometimes it can be that that person's not motivated anymore
Mhm.
and they're not driven enough. And that's, you can't control that.
No,
Someone can
that's
have
not
the
something you can
skill.
coach up.
Exactly. And if that was the case, and I was sat opposite you now in a one-to-one meeting, performance meeting, and I was to say, I'd say something along the lines of, Skip, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want this right now? How much do you want to be here and do well? And you might
Mhm.
say, what would you say? I'm going to put you on the spot. What would you say? Let's say you're not completely performing.
So I'm not performing well. So that's the thing though. Wants are different than, what I think I can do, right? Think
Mm.
that's the question. So you sit down. Nobody goes into the office saying, "Well, yeah, I want to fail." I don't want this. But so I think Would you say that maybe a better question to ask would be, how driven are you to get where you want to be? Because
A
everybody
scale of
wants,
one to
I
10.
want millions of dollars, right? But how willing are you to do what's necessary to get what you want?
Yes, and then I would always ask them to do it on a scale of 1 to 10. So if you were
Yeah.
to say 7, I'd say, "Okay, well, I'm seeing," so it's like a you, me, agree. I'm seeing a 9.
Mhm.
You're saying 9 out of 10. I'm seeing a 5 out of 10. So
Mhm.
where's the gap there? Let's talk about what we're not seeing and
Mhm.
then work through it together so it's a collaborative process. No, don't get me wrong, that's a coaching style. Sometimes people just need to be told.
I'm very, very, I mean, listen, to me, if you don't get your team on board with what you're trying to do, that's a you know, that's a huge problem because, as sales management, I think we're going to start shifting gears here in a second, but as sales management, you are ultimately responsible for the successes and failures of your team. It starts with the hiring, it goes through the coaching, the performance, the accountability, the whole thing. And so, what I'm hearing a lot of right now is that sales management is not doing a great job holding their teams accountable. And I want to see, are you seeing that a lot, or is that just a thing maybe in my industry?
I think can you give me an example where you've seen that? I've got my opinion on it, but I
Yeah.
want you to
So
give me an
so let's just
example.
look at, okay. So my industry is mortgage, in the U.S., which I don't expect you to be. You know what it is. So, but right now we're in what most people consider to be the worst mortgage market in terms of volume and sentiment and everything in about 40 years, right? And so a lot of people are saying, "Oh well, yeah, John Smith's numbers are down because, well, it's the market. It's the market. It's and not saying, hey, you know what? I know your numbers are down. I don't expect you to be killing it like everything's all sunshine and roses out there, but there's still plenty of business to be had. What are you doing to get your share of the business? And so I think I see a lot of management just saying, yeah, it's the market, it's the market, it's the market. And we aren't actually holding our sales teams accountable to say, okay, yeah, the market sucks, but why aren't we trying to go get our own fair share of this, right? Because at that point it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, okay, market sucks, you're gonna laissez-faire yourself right out of the business. So yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think it's very much just turning it around and using it to your advantage.
Mm,
Millionaires were made in recessions,
bad
in
downtimes. That's
COVID.
right.
Yeah, in COVID, I started a business when no one was recruiting, right? So, in many ways, we know that everyone's going to be that bit more complacent, which is the perfect time for new startups. It's where all the big companies really suffer. So, this is the perfect
Mm,
time. And I would say, if I was a manager of that team, I would say, hey, guys, look, this is our time now. So we
Mhm.
need to think outside the box, whether it's, the market's down. How can we look after the people who are affected by that, who are our clients? How can we look
Yeah.
after? So in recruitment, it might be we can send something to people like, I don't know. And what we used to do
Mhm.
is like just a little spa, little kit for the clients just to say, hey, it's a really tough time. Here's something that you can just enjoy at
Yeah.
home until this time's over. How can you use it to kind of build that relationship in a stronger way? And it's just training people to have the solutions, right?
Yeah.
It's like, for example, when the technology fails with my sales team, you could almost see the relief on people's faces. Oh, I don't have to do the calls. I don't have to do the emails. The
Mhm. I don't have to
technology is
enter in
down.
the CRM stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and you can imagine I was the most annoying sales manager. I was like, "Hey guys, perfect time. We're going to do some
I
role play
bet.
training on how to handle objections." And it's like there's always an opportunity
Mhm.
when things are not going well to rethink. We don't get time to train. We don't get time to go away and qualify ourselves in something. So there's always a time to do that so that when we come back and when the mortgage brokers come back, they will be so much stronger than their competitors
Mhm.
who are just waiting.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. So going back to our original topic now, what other ways are you seeing sales managers fail their employees? Because
Well,
you
I
hear
think
it from candidates all day long. You
I
know.
do. I do. I think it always comes down to communication. I
Yeah.
think it's in the same way that I might text you, and this hasn't happened for anyone listening, but I might text Skip and I might say something like, "Hey, Skip, just busy right now. I'll call you later." And Skip might be, "What?" Bit rude. It's a bit standoffish. And I think it's the same. A lot of managers are managing through email. We can't control the perceptions. Like, for example, there was a time when one company I used to work for, they didn't say "Dear Skip" in an email, they'd say "Skip." And many
Mhm.
people found that quite offensive. So it's everyone has different filters, how they like to receive communication, like love languages. It's the same when you're in the office. What do people receive well? And I think the issue is a lot of sales managers forget that people need to be communicated with on a weekly basis. You don't need to over meet them every morning, but once a week, that quality time that's always a priority to the manager.
Mhm.
And to outline exactly what you're seeing, it should never be a surprise. I think that trust is something that I see broken down a lot, where they say, "Oh, I don't know, they said I get this progression, I'm not getting it." But to be really clear and to feel that that person can manage upwards to you. If
Yeah.
your member of staff is scared of you, then you've got a problem. They should always feel at ease to be able to give you feedback and to know that you can receive it in a professional way.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things you just said actually really stood out is about, getting the text response, getting the email response, whatever the case is. Mike Weinberg in his book, Sales Management Simplified, right? Says, and this is a problem, especially when you
Love
talk
this book.
about, yeah, and when you take top performers and move them into sales management, you're taking someone who's used to and needed to be very selfish with their time to someone who essentially had to be very selfless with their time and open and available and always frankly on call,
Yeah.
because your customers then, are your sales team. And so that's a tough transition. It's something that we have to be aware of because your job as a sales manager is to support and enable the success of the team, right? And so you
It's
can't make
like
them
with your
feel like you're
goals,
sticking fiddle.
Yeah, and it's like we talk about your why. Do your sales team
Mhm,
know what your why is? Do they know? Are they driven into your mission? Do they know
mhm.
what you're there to do and what you're trying to achieve? That's really important. I think a lot of sales managers, they show up, but no one really knows what is their brand, if you like, as a
Mhm.
manager. What are you trying to do? And it's then that you can recruit people around that brand to make sure that they are sort of in tune, that their flavor is similar to yours, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, it's gotta be a good fit. Just like not every sale, prospect is a good fit to do business with you. Every recruit is not a good fit to do business with or to join the company, you know?
Definitely.
So
And I tell you what, the companies that do it really well, that they recruit well, they onboard well, they manage well, they also exit well. They
mhm.
exit people in a dignified way.
Let's talk about
I've
that for just a
seen,
second. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
let's
go for
cover
it.
that.
What
Yeah,
do you want to know?
so what is that what is I guess give me an example of that. Give me an example of that. What do you mean by that exactly?
So when I think back to the biggest regret, if you like, I have, it was when I was a new sales manager. And I felt like I was quite powerful. It sounds awful, doesn't it? I had what I like to call Lady Macbeth syndrome. The power went to my head a bit.
I can
I
see
would
that.
get people, oh, cheers. Love you too. But I would call people into meetings and I would be very much kind of like, it was fear mongering. It's like that whole
Mhm.
kind of, oh, it's like that Wolf of Wall Street, like who's going to be fired tomorrow. And I
Mhm.
remember then I had to fire my first person. And I remember I could not sleep the night before. When I did fire them, it just felt awful. I've never seen somebody walk out the door looking, we didn't even, I was told to walk them out. We didn't even give them a chance to say goodbye to the colleagues that they worked with for 6 months. It
Mhm.
was storming them out. And so many companies do this. What happens? Everyone feels uncomfortable in the office because they see what's just
Mhm.
happened. The person who's leaving then goes to other recruiters and talk about what's just happened or other job interviews, and they tell them about what happened. So the reputation of that company is really poor. It also means that anyone coming in will know that the person who just left was exited in such a way. So if it's done in a nice way that everyone feels comfortable. And what I mean by that is saying, Skip, is this working out? What do you think? Have a think about it over the next 3 days. I want to give you a chance to figure out if the performance is working.
Mhm.
And that gives you a chance to think, oh, okay, maybe it's not working out for them. Maybe I'll look for another job. So you can leave with dignity. You hand in your notice on the Monday, or we have a conversation where we both agree that you hand in your notice, or I have a conversation that I agree it's not working out for you. And then it's announced to the company, we have goodbye drinks, everyone gets a chance to say goodbye, and that person leaves with a takeaway. I
Mhm.
can give them advice on what to do next. I'm not just going to throw them out to the wolves and hope they survive. I'm going to tell them what they can do next to be successful. And I think those are the companies, and I work with many of them. They say our people matter most is their slogan.
Mhm.
And it's true in everything they do. Even
Mhm.
the people who go, they check in with them 2 months after to check how they're doing. And those types of things go a long way. Very small, but so effective.
Yeah, no, so checking in with them after they now that's something I've never seen happen before. So
Yeah.
that's actually, I mean, that's definitely going the extra mile for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We have a responsibility. I'm not saying we need to be all fluff and mirrors and, all of that stuff. It's sales. You perform, and yes, there's an element. If you don't perform, you're out. But it's
sure.
the way it can be done.
Yeah. All right, so we're drawing towards the end here, Susanna. Is there anything else that you want to cover today? Anything else you want to talk about?
I think that one thing that I see consistently out there, especially being a recruiter, is the amount of fear that people have in making a change. If
Mm,
something, if you are working somewhere and you feel like you haven't got that trust, or something doesn't feel right, or you're not clear about what you're supposed to be doing, then it could just be that you're not thriving in the right environment. So
right.
my one bit of advice is, before you make a brash decision, think about it carefully, speak to someone, give them a chance, but don't be afraid to make that jump if it is necessary. Listen to your gut
Mhm.
instinct.
All right. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Tell you what, I do have one question for you. I want
Go
to
for it.
see. I've got my own thoughts on this. I want to see what you. So
Oh,
it's a common thing, for an employee comes in, tries to resign, right? Company says, no, 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 we want you, we need you. Here's some more money. All right. And then they say, oh, okay, well, that's pretty good, I guess. To me, that's a mistake. What are your thoughts on that?
do you know what? I've gone back and forth on this.
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth on this because I believe that to be competitive, I think you're on the back foot. You should
Mhm.
have given them that pay rise sooner. You've got to ask yourself whether that candidate had the opportunity to ask, whether they were going to be given that pay rise anyway, if you're paying them equally to the other members of staff. I think if you're getting offered more money, then there's an awful statistic that goes around in recruitment that if you stay for a counter offer, the chances are you'll leave anyway within 6 months.
That's
It's not
correct.
always
Yeah.
it's not always true, but I would say in my experience, it's true
Yeah.
70% of the time.
Yeah, see,
70% of
so
the
it's
time.
yeah, you're just fooling yourself because whatever problem was there, it's still gonna be there. And it turns
It's
out
like cheating.
it wasn't ever about the money.
It's like cheating on a bad relationship and then staying. The trust is gone. right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah,
Well, if you don't,
it's
if you don't address the underlying problems, you're not really fixing anything, right? So,
100%,
yeah. So,
100%.
all right, Susanna, I appreciate you
Loved
coming
our
on
chat.
the show today. If anybody wants to learn more about you, get in contact with you, where should they go? What should they do?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram, which is at Susanna Chimes Search, or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is Susanna Gray Jones. And I'm always posting on there videos and
Yeah,
everything. So
very
looking
active,
forward to
very
seeing
active. So, very good. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you again for coming on.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.